And didn't you guys miss that sound, the Your World jingle? How are you doing this morning? I hope that you're well. Welcome. This is Your World. It's been a minute since we said that word, Your World. But it's good to be back. My name is Winnie Lubembe, and of course, we look forward to an amazing show. I know it's been an interesting week. It's been a difficult week for some, and of course, we continue on the politics side of things during this week, and then we'll go back to our novel issues that is on lifestyle and social again maybe next week, but this week we'll focus on politics and of course the outcomes of the same. So today it's all about life after politics, because as we all know, politics, it can be a very consuming career. We all know that, right? And of course, in just the just concluded elections, that is, some of the candidates who lost their seats had taken up loans. I'm pretty sure you've had one, especially I think it was like Mary MCA who said, me, I took loans, and then the people did not vote for me, so then what do I do? How do I clear all these loans? And even others had actually again taken out grants and all those things. So then how do you repay that? All right. And others had actually resigned from their workplaces. So the question is, then what do you do? Do you go back to your workplace, or what happens? All right. And we also have a group of other politicians or leaders, if you like, who have completed their term. So the question is then, where do you go? How does life after politics look like? Well, that is what we'll be talking about today on the show. So you want to stick around until the end of the conversation. And of course, if you want to chime in, feel free to do so. We always allow you to, right? That is on our social media handles at NTV Kenya, at Lubembe_Winnie on Twitter, and at NTV Kenya on Facebook as well. And just help us understand, how is it, and especially if you've been in politics before and now you're not, how has it been transitioning? All right. And of course, we'll be looking at them in just a moment. But for now, as per usual, again, we missed doing this, and this is COVID-19 numbers. Like we all know, COVID-19 is still here with us. We cannot say the elections came and then COVID-19 disappeared. No, it is still here with us. And of course, it's important for us to, again, continue to, make sure that we, again, look into the protocols and observe all these protocols. All right. So we begin with the global figures as per usual. And up until now, the number of persons who've been infected with COVID-19 across the globe stand at 597,192,773. And the number of persons who've recovered from the same stands at 571,286,342. But unfortunately, we've lost over 6 million people, and to be exact, 6,459,873. So that is what the global figures look like. But let's come back to the country, and according to the health ministry, remember, again, we get the statistics every single day. So up until now, the number of persons who've been infected with COVID-19 stands at 337,966, and then persons who've recovered from the same is at 332,160. But unfortunately, we've lost 5,673 persons again to COVID-19. So a gentle reminder that it is important for all of us to make sure that we observe all the protocol and ensure that we actually, make sure that we remain safe at the end of the day, and that we, again, make sure that you wash your hands, wear your mask, sanitize if possible, and just observe social distance. All right, and of course, that is it with COVID-19. But on to the conversation of the day, like we said, has been a really interesting, week as far as politics is concerned. But then the question is, what do you do, in terms of life after politics? Do you, go back to farming? I've had a lot of people say, yeah, you can actually do farming. It's possible, or others say, you know what, you can actually be a consultant. You can do this, you can do that. But then the question is it really easy transitioning, back to what we call quote unquote reality? And if so, how do you, or if it's not easy for you, then what do you do? So that is what we want to focus on. As you can see, again, have an empty seat, but that means that, again, we're waiting for one more person to join us in the conversation, and that is George Kithi, who, again, as we all know, was running for Kilifi governor, but of course he came in third with 64,321 votes. So, of course, we'll be speaking to him, but in studio with me is Jim India, who is a political analyst as well as a youth leadership development practitioner. How are you doing this morning?
I'm good, Winnie. How are you?
Thank you very much. I am well. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Crazy week, huh?
It's been a crazy one. I think it's been the week where we have been exposed as not being mathematically savvy.
Okay.
We have been exposed as having perhaps one of the best choirs in the world. It's been a week to enjoy.
Yeah.
But it's also been tense.
It's been tense.
Yeah.
But we're happy that, we're sort of like going back. Everything is calming down.
Yeah, there's a sense of calm and there's a sense of normalcy resuming. You drive around town, different parts of the country, even including parts that had been, said to be hotspots.
Yeah.
A lot of those parts gets back to normal because we have to make ends meet. We have to feed our families.
Absolutely.
Kids are going back to school tomorrow as well. So life, there's a sense of normalcy coming back.
Getting back. And of course, we have to give it to Kenyans really, in terms of how we were able to handle, all this, in as much as we had to wait forever for the results. And what we saw at moments, we maintained calm. When you talk to so many people, they say, you know what, at the end of the day, we have a life to live.
Yes.
And there's life beyond politics. There's life beyond all the campaigns and my candidate, and which is a good thing.
It is. I think we took Mandago's advice very seriously when he said politics tusiweke kwa roho, tuweke kwa lungs na tupumue. I think literally that is what Kenyans did. Because they said we voted.
Yes.
And after voting, we went back home. And the rest of it is to IBC and the politicians who are running. And I think that's a good thing because we can't be in this forever.
Absolutely.
We need to figure out how to move on. And of course, humor has always been our way of dealing and our way of coping.
Yes.
So any of you guys who've been out there, the meme lords and everybody else.
That got us through the whole process.
It's part of our dealing process.
It really did. It really did. All right. And of course, I just wanted to then pick your brain in terms of the whole aspect of the campaigning period. We've seen, and especially now, we've seen a lot of candidates actually, proving their muscle, and saying, listen, we do not need to be in a particular party for us to either clinch a seat or to emerge victorious or this or that. We've also seen a lot of newbies, coming in. We've seen a lot of big names being sent home. It's been an interesting shift, as far as our politics is concerned. What do you make of that? Are we becoming of more progressive democracy, more women governors,
more young people
as well? Young people,
we still don't have the exact data, but we are more than convinced that we have a lot more women who've been elected governors directly as members of National Assembly, apart from the women representative seat. And equally, among young people, in Nairobi, we have 2 young people, governor and senator. But ideally, you have a lot of independent candidates. You have a woman governor in Meru who's an independent candidate. And I think that's not talked about enough, how she managed to flow 2 men who had been in the political scene for a very long time. And she went ahead and she's now the governor. You have a couple of members of parliament in areas like Kisumu East. They have a member of parliament who's an independent candidate. You have places like Kobura Ward, for instance, again in Kisumu, they have an independent member of county assembly. All this is showing that we are starting to look into the leader and not necessarily into the outfit. Of course, largely our politics is still very euphoric, and there's a wave that people look at. What's the wave? Is it a UDA wave? And people want to go with it. But if you look at the individuals who were voted out and individuals who were voted in, it's progressively we're getting to an age where we're looking at the individual and you're looking at what they bring to the table, and judging actually candidates based on their track record and just saying you did not perform. You might be very popular, but you did not perform, and we have absolutely no use for you in this county
into the again the seat, or like you're saying into the county. Now then, when we talk about leadership in its sense, and especially in this case, again, it's politics, right? I know there's usually this conversation about leaders are made versus leaders are born, but really in your context, and especially the fact that, again, this is what you deal with mostly. What is it that makes a great leader? Before we talk about even life after politics and how you adjust and all those things, but really before even getting into that position in the first place, what is it that it needs, you know, for us to say, us as the electorate to say, you know what, that was actually a great leader?
So leadership, if you look at it, it's both skill and what we call values. So you've had, you know, leaders are made or born. Someone argues and says, one, they have to be born, and then they have to be made. So ultimately, someone has to be born for us to call them a leader.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, you don't have a leadership gene. We don't have a gene that we call this. This is a leadership gene, and we can scientifically say, you have a leadership gene, I don't have a leadership gene. Leadership ultimately is acquired through an environment that you have been around places and you've been given opportunities, and these opportunities have set you up in such a way that you become a lot more responsible. So it's the skill part of it, that you don't only have to occupy a position, but you have to be so skilled that you're able to work with and through people. But also, number two, it is the values bit, and our constitution even prescribed it. Leadership and integrity. They didn't just talk about leadership. They said you have to go a step further and talk about integrity. It is one of the ways you can be impeached as a leader. It is one of the main reasons the president does the annual State of the Nation address, that he has to brief us on what progress are we making as a nation towards the realization of our national values as a country. Because without values, then you are a robot in a box that's operating. Leadership is very relational. It goes beyond just what you can do, but what you can achieve through people and through groups of people. How can you inspire a community, a group that's working with you to achieve more? How do you push people to achieve their very best? Most of the times the leader isn't necessarily the smartest, but they know how to work with very smart people around them to get the very best results. And so I think what makes a good leader is those two things, that one, they're skilled, but also they have great values, and three, they have amazing interpersonal skills with people, able to tap onto their potential and push them to achieve the very best that they can.
And you know, right now we're seeing a lot of people who, and I'm pretty sure you've heard this, you know, in the streets, again, amongst maybe your peers or maybe not, where people say, you know what, maybe nataka kuingia politics. Like at this point, maybe nataka kuwa politician because we use it sort of like a cash cow. It's easy. I go there, nidanganye watu here and there, and then they vote for me, and then when I get, you know, into power, I may or may not do so much. Some say, mimi nikipata hiyo position, kitu ya kwanza nitafanya, lazima nijiweke, you know, some. So it's like, it's becoming an easier way, you know, for people to acquire wealth, for people to acquire, you know, the name and prominence and all those things. But really, what does that do then to the kind of leadership that we expect to see as a country?
Unfortunately, Winnie, the poster boys and girls for leadership in this country have set the bar so low that anybody feels like they can cross that bar. We've had the examples that have been set of what leadership is. It's been self-gratifying. It's been self-serving. And we have seen leaders who've occupied those positions, the very highest positions, to enrich themselves, to enrich their families, their friends, and their cronies. And so what we translate, because if you have a young population, for instance, we are what we see. What is being mirrored to us, that's what we see. And so a lot of people who are getting into politics, this is actually a source of livelihood and not an opportunity of service. So it is an opportunity, it is another source of employment, that if you're looking at your monthly income and you realize you're not making enough, you think, okay, maybe I need to go into politics.
I need to try politics.
I need to transition my career, right? And so you transition to a more lucrative career. Because we have seen that perhaps our politicians are the most paid politicians around the world.
That's true.
We have seen the packages that they're getting. They can increase their salaries. Where on earth can you as an employee
decide, by the way, from today henceforth?
Yeah, from today, I think I deserve to double my salary, right? And if you have a society where those who work the hardest earn the least, where those who, some of them don't even pay taxes, and enjoy the best health covers and enjoy the best education covers through our taxpayers' money. And so that is the example that we've been given, an example of people who want to serve themselves and not necessarily people who want to serve the country. So people are getting into it and saying, okay, I saw so-and-so became a politician, and suddenly they became a billionaire. Suddenly they had businesses.
Oh,
suddenly.
yes.
So
Everything is working
that's an
for them.
opportunity for me to do it. And it's a get-rich-quick kind of mentality. It's, you know, I know a lot of people bet for whatever reasons, but it's the same mentality that how can I make money as quick as possible? Now, it's not helped by the fact that the electorate also enables this behavior. Because during campaigns, what does the electorate do? Mheshimiwa, lazima utuachie kitu.
Oh, absolutely. And of course, we'll talk about that,
Yeah.
you know, in terms of then, does that translate into the kind of leadership that we're seeing? Because what you're saying is, you know, the bar has been set so low, you know, for us, and even those ones who, you know, that are upcoming, they do not have anything to sort of like measure, you know, what is in terms of the deliverables versus, again, why you're getting there in the first place. So in terms of then the servant leadership, it's like we do not have that anymore.
Yeah. And you see, we don't. So civil servants, those who are employed through the Public Service Commission, have a performance contract with government, and they agree on these are your deliverables. And you have some of the smartest brains in government, and they do deliver. And then you have this other crop of public servants who are politicians, and we do not have a performance contract with them. So I don't have a performance contract with my member of parliament, right? So he comes, campaigns, wins, and for the next 5 years, he does whatever he feels like he wants to do. Because I'm not involved, I don't know what he wants to do.
There's nothing to hold him accountable.
The only way I hold him accountable is after 5 years, when the next election comes to place. And so this enables them to literally get away with so much. And I think that in itself is what, because you don't have the proper role models, the proper mentors, so that those who come into parliament, we saw John Paul Mwirigi. In 2017, he got into parliament, and the first thing he got was a big car. It was a gift. He was told, hey, welcome to the club, welcome to the big boys club. We'll give you a car, right? And this is a guy who served his people so diligently as a teacher on his bicycle. And suddenly you get a big man, big woman mentality syndrome. And you know, we've seen this in books. There's a Nigerian author who wrote the book, I don't remember the name of the book, but it's about this man who becomes a politician, and suddenly his behavior changes. You suddenly do not relate to the people the way you used to. You suddenly become better than the people. And as I said, leadership, you have to work with and through. They don't work that. They work, you know, on their own independent way, whatever they want to do.
And that is just sad. So then again, so those persons who are coming into politics for the very first time, and I'm pretty sure you've seen a lot. There's some who actually took the first stab and and got the positions, and others tried, it did not work for them, and they would go back and say, but I did all this, and you did not vote for me. So then what is it that they need to know about politics and case, just to be exact, politics in the country?
I like that you've distinguished and said, you've been very categorical and said politics, because I think in this country we have to separate politics from leadership.
From leadership, yes.
That there's a sense in which our politicians might not necessarily be the best examples of leaders that we have around. But a lot of people get into politics quite naive, quite green, and they have ideas and imaginations of what politics is. And the problem is they surround themselves with the yes men and yes women who tell them exactly what they want to hear. So a politician, you know, decides, I look at this area and I think I'm popular enough. When I go to the market, everyone says hi to me.
Yes.
All the boda guys know me. Or I have made some few monies here and there. So I think it's an opportunity for me to serve my people. And what that does is they get into the politics. They've not done their research and on how many people do we have in this area? What are their needs? What are the trends and patterns of the people who've won or lost in the last 5 or so elections? They don't have a proper campaign team. And that's normally the first place that you start as a politician. Who is in your campaign team? Who's running your campaign team? Because as a politician, the one thing you know how to do is perhaps to address rallies. That's the one thing you know how to do. But running a campaign goes beyond just addressing rallies. It goes into an array of strategies. Do you need to do door-to-door? Do you need to call some people? Do you need to fundraise? And then you have people who go into politics with their own money, which is a... Which is not a very clever idea. Which is not a very clever idea. Some took loans.
Some took loans.
Some took, you know, loans on their houses, on their cars, on their. And you put your family at so much risk because should you lose, you're betting everything and putting everything on the line. Should you lose, it's not just your life on the line, it's your kids, it's your family that's actually going to pay for it. And so I think the first thing that a lot of people need to know when you're getting into politics, do you have your campaign team in place? And this campaign team, are they qualified people? Not just those very popular people on the ground. You need them, but you need 1 or 2 people in that campaign team who know what they're doing and who've run a campaign before or who have an idea of how to run a campaign. And they'll be able to tell you your budget for this campaign, it will cost you 10 million. Do you have the 10 million? You don't. Okay. This is how we can actually fundraise for this 10 million within this time. Also, you need to start early. You have people starting a few months to the election. We worked with some young people at my organization who were running for elections, and 2 months to the election, some of them were in between. They're like, yes, I want to run, I've announced it, but I'm not sure if I want to run. A month to the election, some of them were dropping out and saying, no, I don't want to run. They've already spent money. And so anyone who wants to be a politician in 2027 should perhaps have figured it out on the 10th of August. They should have figured and said, okay, in 2027, I want to be who's going to be in my campaign team, what's my agenda, which area, what do I need to do?
All right. Let's take a break, but of course, when we come back, I'd want us to pick up from there in terms of fine. I have lost, okay? Maybe I did not have the correct strategy. I did not have maybe enough finances, money, again, to finance, you know, my... what is it called, my campaign, you know, and all those things. So then the question might be, what then do you do after politics, after trying out politics? What do you do? And even like we said, for the ones who, again, have had a successful run and Kazi Meisha. We're Mheshimiwa anymore. You do not have your titles, you do not have your influence. What next? What do you do? Of course, that is what we would want to pick up from the same. But if you have any question, feel free to interact with us. If you want to chime into the conversation of the day, feel free to do so. We're here to answer all your questions. But of course, we'd also want to understand from you and from your perspective, what is it that makes that great leader, that great politician that you look up to and you say, you know what, this guy or this lady is actually performing, all right? What is it, you know, what is that one character that you can pick from our leaders? Of course, we'll be sampling your feedback after the break. Stay with us. This is Your World.
We all start differently, but we can all start with the strongest protection. Because some start early, others start late. Some from little homes, others from big ones. Some start together, or all on their own.
It doesn't matter how you start, as long as you start strong. With new Colgate Maximum Cavity Protection. Now with fluoride plus arginine for 4 times more strengthening power. So that you can give them the strongest start to their day. Colgate. Start strong, stay strong.
Kwa nini kunichenga chenga?
Miaka mitatu kule Japan.
Kidogo tu.
Usomea kudunga watu.
Utamu tu.
Sindane.
Jamani, tunachenga mpira ndani ya gumzo la Sato.
Sitaki mzee aliezeka. Nataka kijana. Sasa ni
kadro wewe una vita na sisi niteleze.
Bila utakuota kidogo.
Ngoja. Hata mimi.
Tukijadili masuala yanayokuathiri wewe katika jamii.
Hii ni sura yangu na hii sura imeolewa.
Na mambo mingi kwa ndoa ambayo hayahusiani na mapenzi peke yake.
Penda kweli lakini pia tumia bongo.
Naloogopa kusema na wengine Frida twaliweka wazi.
Huyo mwanamume wa kizungu akaja na pupa mwisho akabakishwa na kachumbari na maavocado.
I'm not a burden to her. Like she'll be feeding me like that.
Huyo babu mimi namuelewa. Anajua anakoenda. Shiro hata afadhali ungeniuliza ngapa leo ndugu yangu mdogo. Ombea.
At each stage of your business cycle, there are different opportunities and challenges. Has your business evolved and made strides to adapt and be the best in your field? Enter the 2022 Top 100 Mid-Sized Companies Survey and showcase how you have driven success at every stage of your business. Submit your entry at www.eastafricatop100.com. Survey closes on 9th September 2022. Top 100 SMEs. Be seated among the great.
God is always engaged in our affairs. He's engaged in your life. He's engaged in the life of our community. He's engaged in the life of our church. He's engaged in the life of our nation.
Hamjambo wa Kenya, mimi ni Eric Smith, na kupata wimbo huu kama sikiza tune yako, bonyeza *811 *851#. Skiza na Nation, supporting local talents.
All right, welcome back. Glad you're still with us. The show is Your World, and today it's all about life after politics. We're analyzing how, first of all, do you pick up after yourself? I mean, the title is gone. You know, like almost everything is gone in terms of your power, your influence. It is no longer there. So then how do you move on from there? How do you, again, adjust to this other side of life that maybe you were not used to for a very long time? And that is, you do not have, you know, that office where someone comes and calls you governor, mheshimiwa, senator, you know, all those things. How do you pick up after yourself? And of course, help us with that, we have Jim India, who's a political analyst, as well as a youth leadership development practitioner. And of course, we were expecting George Kithi, who's not managed to come as at now. So Jim, it's just you and I, which is okay. But then the question, remember what we were talking about earlier on in terms of what people need to understand in terms of politics and leadership, and how coming into this space will actually influence your life one way or the other. Because now you're not just an ordinary person. Now you're Wendy Mheshimiwa. We come to your office. We need money. We need this. We need that. So then after that, what happens? How do you transition? And I know you deal mostly with, you know, persons who've served and those ones who are also coming in. So I just want to understand, first of all, for persons who've served, you know, what are they saying? What was the experience like for them in office and even after?
So one of the things about, you know, being a politician is it's a big office with a lot of advantages. So you have a lot of cars, you have, you know, we clear the road for them and ensure that Mheshimiwa passes. We provide them with so many staff at their home and things like that. And their life is constantly busy. They're in one meeting after the next. Everybody wants your attention because as a member of parliament, for instance, you have a vote in parliament and your vote can influence key decisions, key policies in this country. So all the big companies want your time. Anyone who wants to set up a business in this country wants your time. The religious leaders want your time, but also your community. You're invited to every harambe.
Oh, 100%.
You're invited to every funeral. Everybody wants a piece of you. And it's a fast-paced life. Now, unfortunately, some people don't invest in, you know, strong social circles. So you don't have a very strong accountability group around you. And we have had, for instance, we run a mentorship program where we pair older politicians with those who are just coming in. And part of the lesson that these guys tell the young ones is, one, please make sure you have a very strong circle of friends, a support system from your family. Be there for your family, provide for your family, because when all the titles are stripped and gone, they're the people that remain. Have friends around you as well who will keep you accountable, because those are the relationships that keep you going. That's the support system that enables
that you want. And still on support, I mean, yesterday we were having this conversation in terms of then how do you move on after losing an election. Of course, one of the things that came out strongly is support system. And I remember we also asked the question of then what does support look like? Because it can be a very thin line between identifying a support system that is genuinely supporting you, standing with you at all times. When you mess up, they tell you, listen, by the way, and others who are just in for the ride. You know, you did so well, and really, you know, so that then when you lose power, when you lose your influence, they just disappear and they're not there anymore. So then in terms of identifying genuine support, what exactly does that look like?
I mean, that boils down to it's more of a gut feeling. It's like asking, how do you choose your best friend from just your regular friends? It boils down to a gut feeling, but it also boils down to how much time you're creating for them. Our friendships are only as strong as how much you invest in those friendships, right? And so if we don't invest as much time in them, that during your 5 years in office, you never checked up on your friends or on your family, and then you come 5 years later, that these people also feel used. I mean, you're not there for us. Why do you need to be there for you now? And so you need to identify those people who have been with you before you were even Mheshimiwa.
Yes,
right?
Who know you.
Who know you before the title came around. Who knew you before you amounted to anything, quote unquote. Those are the people who will stick by you, no matter what happens on the other side, because they know you and they understand you. People who will be truthful with you as well. And also, as you said, not people who just want to tell you the things you want to hear. And so those who are religious, those who would point you back to that, those who would go to therapy, those who would point you to therapy, because that's a valid way of dealing with the trauma that comes with an election, with the grief that comes after an election. It's a valid way to deal with it. So you need people who would point you and say, look, I don't understand what's going on in your mind and in your heart. I'm not a professional. You need to see a professional. And they would walk the journey with you as they lead you in that direction as resources start to dwindle, because campaigns are very expensive. And by the time you lose, you have you've invested a lot of money in it. And so you're probably you don't have the same resources you had before. So people who, again, direct you onto how do you save better? How do you connect you with a job or with a consultancy here and there? Because at that stage, you're also a high risk. A lot of people don't want to hire.
Right?
You probably said a lot of things in the past that employers don't want to be associated with. So very few people want to hire you. So perhaps you want to run your own thing. How do we support you to actually start running because having a source of livelihood gives you a sense of having a new normal. You're trying to replace what you're used to. You have to replace it with something new and healthy. Because if you're not careful, then you go the other side and replace it with something very negative. People get into alcoholism and all different addictions and all that. So you need to replace it with something else. So if it's professionally, you need to replace it with a different kind of profession. If it's farming, like you were saying earlier,
you can still farm.
Please, they need to be there with you, not just telling you what you need to do, because at that time, people need a lot of hand-holding. And you've had someone who said, I needed to be hand-held. I needed to be walked with this journey. And I had someone who walked with, or I didn't invest in any relationships, and so I was alone. And I was groping in the dark on my own.
It can be very devastating, actually, to just be alone, you know, during that moment when you need people. All right, so support system is very important, according to what, again, some who say is important, all right? Invest in the people, invest, again, your time, build these relationships, because even after, you will literally go back to those people, and it's them you expect to hold you. So then, after the support, identifying the support is important. What else then do you need to sort of help you, you know, to pick up after yourself and just, you know, have a comfortable life, if we can say, comfort in all areas, mentally, physically, emotionally, all these areas, just to make sure that you still function, such that even if you do not have the title, you still remain relevant, you know, in the society.
So two things. One is we have seen how, again, political networks, tapping into those networks has helped. A lot of politicians who lost elections, you've seen them around. You've seen them appointed in commissions, cabinet secretaries, boards of different parastatals, CECs at the county level. And a lot of those come through those political networks. And you know, tap into those political networks, because I think those are still valid options for a politician to still remain in the circle of politics. That when you lose honorably, right? Don't go around abusing your opponents or those who voted for you. Lose honorably. And we've seen in Kenya people conceding and saying, hey,
you know,
the people have spoken, I accept
people.
it. I wish my, the new governor all the best.
All the best,
if you're open to a cup of coffee, because you had great ideas for that constituency as well.
True. That's
and
true.
So it's your opportunity to negotiate and say, hey, I got 60,000 votes. Those are 60,000 people who believed in me. How can I support you better? So that's one of the things. Tap into those networks. Tap into, because you have immense resources as an individual, resources in terms of people, a wealth of knowledge, information that the county needs or whichever constituency still needs. So speak to those people, and there'll always be an opportunity. But the second thing that you also need to figure out is, once a leader, always a leader.
That's true. That's true. I think that is where we distinguish between a leader and a politician.
You're always a leader. If you're in it for the people, then service to the people does not end the moment the position goes away.
That's true.
Right? Your people still have issues and they still have needs. And it's an opportunity for you to now operate at a very different scale and level. Because now you have an opportunity to influence, not at your position, but while you're with the people. You have an opportunity to interact with the people and understand their issues more. So how do you do advocacy programs? For instance, if the people are saying that the new member of parliament has not built a road, you know how to mobilize people.
Absolutely.
And you can easily mobilize them around the issues. If the people are saying they need more money channeled towards healthcare, you can easily mobilize them around and tell them, how does the budget process work? Because you've been there before.
Oh, yes.
And so if they want to influence the budget, what do they need to do to ensure that what they need gets into the budget? And so all of a sudden you become a resource to your people because they can run to you. You have the knowledge, you have the networks, you know who to call, you know how to draft a petition, you know how to, you know, if it's an issue that needs to go to court, you have access to the court system and things like that. And so now you're operating as a leader among your people and with them, because unfortunately politicians remove themselves from the people.
From the people.
And what this does to you is it rubber stamps and legitimizes your position as a leader. But also, number two, it gives you an opportunity to serve them. Keep serving them. You might not get money out of it, but you keep serving your people. And if your heart was for service, you keep doing it. But also, number three, from a very selfish point of view, you're preparing ground for your next contest.
That's true.
Suddenly.
Okay, for those ones who have not finished their term. For those ones who still have.
But even those who finish their term, if you've done
there are other ways that
if you've done 2 terms as governor, you can take a 5-year break and come back in the next election. So this 5 years, please
strategize.
Work with your people. Show them that you're the leader that they need. You're literally building a campaign team while serving your people.
All right.
So I think it gives you an opportunity to do those couple of things. Serve the people, be a resource person, but also number two, become a launching pad for you. And that's very selfish. You still have those ambitions. Become a launching pad for you into the next election that you want to run.
But what about those ones who decided, you know what, I've had a good run, I have served the people, it's time for me to just retire, take a break, breathe and enjoy the fruits of my labor. I mean, we've seen this with, with other leaders, like, for example, like former presidents and prime ministers, again, in the US, what we've seen Barack Obama just having a time of his life, we've seen others who've gone into painting, we've seen others who've decided, you know what, I'm going to venture more into charities and all those things. So for those ones who've decided, this is it. I've had a good run. Let me just, take my time for myself, for my family, and all those things. So then, how do you, readjusting into that and still feel relevant?
So what I've seen, at least with a few politicians, is they've gone ahead to start foundations, community-based organizations that they probably don't run the whole time, because any leader has that thing that's very close to their heart. Most of them, it's around education or healthcare, and they start a program that can always keep them busy, that can always keep their communities engaged. Some of them go ahead and start schools that they can run. But I think more than anything is you have an opportunity to now mentor the next generation of leaders.
That's the most important thing.
You have an opportunity to, you know, sort of create other leaders within that space who you can, you know, mentor, offer your experience to them, offer your knowledge to them, open doors and networks for them, and allow them to grow. And it's part of succession planning, really. If you think about it, you're thinking about the next generation. When you're gone, when you're no longer here with us, what does the next generation look like? Do we have men and women who are ready to take up the mantle of leadership? You have an opportunity to pass on that DNA to a huge generation, and you do that through different ways. You can do mentorship in schools. You can identify young people that you can actually just sit around with and mentor. You know, do a lot of charity works within the community, the community of practice. But I've also seen quite a number of them who are professionals. Just go back to their practice.
Yes.
If you're a lawyer, you just go back to law and say, this is what I studied for anyway, and you just go back to do what you're doing professionally. Those of them who are teachers, some of them decide, you know, I'll just go back to teaching as I wait for my sunset days and enjoy time with family.
Yeah, or just travel, like. Right?
Or just travel. I mean, unfortunately, not very many Africans have travel for fun, for leisure. But yeah, you're able to have a time of your life.
Yeah, because you've worked so hard.
You've worked really hard.
Years, and the pressure and the expectations that the electorate have on you.
And suddenly, there's no pressure.
Right?
You can go to different parts of the world. You can have a good time with friends who will not expect a lot from you. You can you know, finally go to the Masai Mara as a tourist as well. Or
someone was actually saying, you know what, they should travel more and promote local tourism. So maybe that's an option. All right, but then for those of us who decide to go back to, again, their careers, back to workplaces, I don't know if you've seen whether it was an article or this person was saying, I lost, right? I'm still in my productive years, I can still go back to work. But then again, when he went back to work, the boss was like, you know what, you need to kneel. You know, it was it was a treacherous process for him to get his job back. And we're not even sure that he got the job, you know. So then going back, you know, because he had to resign. And everybody knew, how you used to send and end up home with Shimiwa. And then you're coming back, Zile, hi guys, can I have my job back?
Hi guys.
You know, it can be a bit difficult to go. So then how do you do that? Do you maybe look for another job somewhere else? Do you start a business? It's difficult.
It's a humbling experience. If you think about it, it's very it's difficult. And you know, I have a personal friend who struggled and they didn't go back to employment. They just said, I can't be that person that I used to be 5-10 years ago. I'm a different person now. I know better. But you realize that if you need, there's a lot of adjusting that goes on after politics. And the adjustment goes from your mentality to your ego, to your feelings and emotions. Because suddenly you're answering to somebody else. Suddenly there's someone else who expects you to deliver on certain KPIs. And that can be, that level of accountability. I think a lot of our politics is not premised on that. It's not promised on that level of accountability. And it's something that you have to adjust to, because that's just how the rest of the world operates. Unfortunately, unless you are your own boss, and even if you're all your own boss, there's a level of accountability that you have to your board, to your shareholders.
You're always accountable to
the one place where you're not as accountable is in politics. And so the biggest adjustment that a lot of politicians always have to do is adjust to accountability and subject yourself to authority. That is something that you train yourself over time. It doesn't come instantly. You try, it's difficult, and you keep trying and trying until when it works for you. So for those who could go that route, that's an option for them. But for those who it just becomes impossible, it's figure out how to start then your own thing so that you run things in your own terms. And you know, you sort of don't have to be as accountable as you would be to an employer or to, you know, to a board or things like that. But that I have seen is the most really difficult experience.
I can imagine.
How do I become, suddenly you're asking me to report at work at 8 and I have to report at 8 and if I don't, there's a problem. I can't live here before 5. And
we have rules, we have structure they have to abide by.
And remember when we started, I said, because we don't have a performance contract with our politicians, we enable that behavior. And it's good for them while they're there until they get out of the world and becomes very difficult to deal with.
Do you think we should introduce that? We are the electorate, we are the bosses. Do you think we should start introducing? Because again, like we said earlier on, sometimes it can be very difficult to hold, you know, this politician accountable. 5 years later, when they come back to ask for votes, is when we'd say, you know what, we gave you a job and you did not perform, so no thanks. Do you think we need to introduce that so that we see results as soon as you step office? I mean, your foot into the office. We need to see something being done.
Unfortunately, it is there. It's enshrined in our constitution. There's something called public participation, which is the reason why, for instance, even the BBI was thrown out of court, that there was not sufficient public participation. Our constitution mandates us that before any policy, anything is passed, the people must be consulted. The people must consent to it. Then it can be passed in parliament. The first level of passing a policy is with the people. Now, unfortunately, we the people don't attend those public participation meetings, don't know when they happen, don't know where they happen, don't know how they happen. So we have absconded our duty to keep our leaders accountable. And our leaders have found a way of beating the system. And so they hire people to come to a hall and say, how many of you guys agree with this? All of you? Good things. And then they say there was public participation that happened. So I think it's already enshrined. It's perhaps for those of us who are in the space, you know, civil society, governments and whatnot, to try and see how do we sensitize the public to be more aware that they have a duty, a civic responsibility of keeping their leaders accountable after election, all through before the next election.
All right. And of course, us as the electorate, I mean, sometimes we can be the source of trouble in this sense, that we see this politician as an ATM, you know, najua nitaenda kwake sitatoka bila, you know, this amount of money. So then this puts so much pressure on this politician in terms of, fine, I will help as much as I can, but at the same time, if I get another opportunity, I'll find a way to get my money back. So we don't really question where they get this money, where they hand out, you know, almost all the time to us as the electorate. So then, what then is it that we need to do, maybe change as the electorate to, yes, allow this person to do their job without necessarily having to be on their neck all the time, NCA, mtoto wangu, hospitali, school fees, you know, all those things. But, you know, so that this politician as well does not forget about themselves in terms of giving too much. And then once you're done, you don't have anything. You know, go back to being poor.
As I said, we have enabled, the culture where politicians don't feel like they should not be accountable to us. Because I have a friend who says anytime he visits his constituency for a weekend, he has to have cash, about 2 million cash.
Oh, wow.
Because he will be called to at least 3, 4, 5 harambes. There's a church one. He will be asked for school fees for about 50 different kids. There's a medical appeal that he has to show up and support. And there's just so many different things. And it's not there's a road that needs to be done. Or there's a what? No. These are responsibilities that our members of parliament and other politicians have that are not even in the constitution. They're not part of their responsibilities. They're this, almost call them social responsibilities. And politicians have complained and said, we have so many social responsibilities that take away from our actual work that we've been mandated to do. And so they have become the ones who solve all our social problems in society. Now, the other thing is, I have a politician who says, I know their calls when I see they're asking for money. There are people who, when they come to see me, they're asking for money.
Nothing, no new idea, no.
Now, you speak to the citizens, they say, I don't like that politician, because anytime we meet them, they don't give us money. They don't
give us money.
All right? So the politician is caught in between, and it can be a reason why you'll be voted out. And they'll say you're stingy. Right? You're stingy, you don't give out money. So where does the politician get 2 million every week? So that is about 8 million by the end of the month. This politician is earning $1 million. That's a maximum salary that they're earning. Where are they getting the other 7 million from? right?
Yeah.
And then we are surprised when they pass laws that are ridiculous in Parliament. It's because there are people who are paying for those laws to be passed in Parliament. Then we are surprised when they're involved in scandals. It's because they have to fund our very expensive lifestyles. The politicians, they become their responsibilities. They become our parents, funding our expensive lifestyles that we can't afford.
That we can't afford ourselves.
But we have put that burden on them. And so it's going to be a difficult balance to create. It's going to require that the electorate realizes that we are the ones who are actually enabling corruption.
Whatever is happening now.
In, in our systems. And we have to change behavior. Even as the politician tries to change behavior, because any politician, ask any politician who's run a clean campaign, who said, I will not bribe people, they have not ended up being voted in. And we have so many examples. Boni even did a whole documentary for us to watch. And he said, I ran a clean campaign. I had a manifesto. I told them what I would do for them. But these people still refused to vote for him and voted for somebody else who's giving them money. So it's an impossible situation that we find ourselves in as a country, where we expect so much from the politician, but it seems like we expect very little from the electorate.
All right, and maybe that is the reason why we see some of these, running away from the constituencies that are already 5 years later because of all these stresses. So we should do better as the electorate, but also, the politicians, the leaders who, again, we appoint should also do better, really, in terms of service to the people. So we need to bring this to a close. So then what would you say in terms of just making sure that, number one, we have a progressive democracy, number two, people are aware of what exactly it entails for you to get to that point of leadership and what is expected of you to serve and serve diligently. But even when you leave again with honor, but still continue to be relevant. What would you say in 1 minute?
One, there's the place of skill. As we started out, there's this place of skill. You can't just wing it as a leader. You have to be skilled. You have to be good at your craft. Number two, you have to realize how to work with and through people. Your role as a leader is to facilitate the people to realize their very best potentials. It is not necessarily to do for them. The people have the ability to do for themselves. And number three, you have an opportunity to build the next generation of leaders. And you can do that through mentorship. But also you have an opportunity to please build a very strong support system around you as a leader, as a politician, because you will need it. You will need it when you're a politician, but you'll need it even after. There's life after that. So invest in those social capitals as much as you can.
I like that. Jim India, political analyst, youth and leadership, youth leadership development practitioner. Thank you so much for coming by today. Very insightful conversation we had. And I like what you said. At the end of the day, there's life after politics, right? And it's up to us to make sure that we build those strong foundations, especially for the leaders. So we have to bring the conversation to a close. But thank you so much for staying with us until the end of the show. My name is Winnie Lubembe, and I hope you've learned a lot. I'll see you tomorrow morning, same time, same place. But until then, as always, remember to stay safe, God bless, and remember to keep peace. Especially those ones around you, especially during this period, right? Let's just be empathetic, let's be kind to one another, and embrace one another. So, see you tomorrow. Have yourselves a good one. Thank you for coming. Time flies.
Thank you. Thank
Gosh.
you. All of a sudden it was,
right?
It was 10 o'clock.